All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here on the Harmless Dave channel, talking about real music and what the Matrix does to real music when they hear it, and where does it go, and why don't you hear about it very much? Doing what I do in real time for a few real people out here, just like you and just like me. So, Van Morrison dropped an album back in June, and he's a bit prolific, right? He comes out with music, so much music, and it's hard to keep up with Van. If you were just a fan of Van and only listen to Van Morrison, do they have a Van Morrison channel over on Sirius XM? Because it wouldn't get boring. Because his catalog is probably bigger than anyone else's catalog. And he came under attack from the usual suspects during the lockdowns, and he's written songs like "Why Are You on Facebook," which I think is awesome. Oh, I think that's such a good song. And "Where Have All the Rebels Gone?" Isn't it interesting that it took the mild-mannered, well-dressed Van Morrison to call out the establishment? I will never forget that. He and Eric Clapton and like two other people, you know, and they didn't do it as vociferously as Van Morrison did it. And this is part of an article that I found on his new album, which, by the way, I would say please go and listen to his new album. Remembering Now is the name of the album. It says here, while some have criticized the subject matter of recent compositions, "Why Are You on Facebook?" and "They Own the Media." Now this person writing it doesn't, the fact that he brings this up, though, shows that you have to stay on the reservation. You can't start critiquing the people who distribute this music or get it to the masses. That's why, you don't hear Van Morrison. Van Morrison vocally is about the same as he's always been. He's 80 years old, and it's kind of like Eric Clapton. There really is no big difference in his voice. You got to go way back, and yeah, when people are younger, they tend to sound more chipmunky, if that's a thing. I just made it up. It's your voice ages and it matures, but the general tone of his vocal, and he kind of sings in this storytelling mid-range place, which is good for him. It's good for us, and it helps with longevity, right? I mean, he's obviously as prolific. In fact, the last 10 years, Van Morrison has been on a tear, right? It's like kind of like Robin Trower. If you look at his catalog over the last 10 to 15 years, the dude had this resurgence, and the same with Van Morrison. And by the way, rather than ignoring the chaos and the crisis from 4 or 5 years ago, Van Morrison put out this album called Latest Record Project Volume 1. He got checked here because he didn't put out a Volume 2. Maybe he will at some point. I mean, maybe next year. You don't know. But tunes, again, like "Why Are You on Facebook?" and "They Own the Media." And there are others that he did that simply were remarking about what was happening at the time. I mean, this is what a good songwriter will do from time to time, is they'll stray into more specific things. I mean, you can't write all of those great blues, pop, soul, and jazzy, Celtic, and even a bit of country stuff. I mean, the guy is just incredible with the variety of stuff that he brings in. I think he really loves soul music. I mean, if I were to say what his number one thing is, but it's hard to pin him down. Now, this new album called Remembering Now came out on June 13th with almost zero coverage from the classic rock outlets. Now you can Google and you could probably find, Van Morrison releases this album today, but critics aren't running around talking about it. It's not interesting to them because Van is such a no nonsense, get to work, create great music. Not only that, but the guy is probably writing a song a day. I imagine he's just constantly writing songs, and whether that results in a song, he might come up with an idea and then scrap it and then try again the next day, and it's a good idea. Um, it's just amazing. Now it says here he's 79 years old, but technically he's almost 80. He not only wrote and produced the 14 new songs and played instruments. Okay, it's always great to know his lesser known talents like saxophone, right? This just he's a super musician. He's a Superman, right? They say Van the man, Van the Superman, right? Um, but it says here it's good to hear that something has reignited the lyrical spark many found absent from his current material. So he took a break to do some commentary on the crazy, wacky culture. And so they found that they couldn't listen to that stuff because it was too on point or it irritated them. And they wanted to get back to sort of this more generics. And by the way, when he writes a song, just what I would consider to be not a cultural commentary, his music is very spiritual, very deep, very spiritual. And in some cases it's like Christian music without putting that label on it. um the commentator here says that Morrison's voice exhibits no weakening. See, I agree with that. Anyone unaware of his octogenarian status would think he was half as old as his birth certificate reads. Yeah, I mean, I could envision like a 40-year-old. This album, vocally, the recording, it's so good. I mean, this is a super recommendation here. I know I put out stuff about the Cheap Trick album. That's in a different category. This one here, if it's more adult contemporary as far as what you listen to, this one would be a go-to. And in the old days, you could mix Van Morrison with Cheap Trick on a radio station and get away with it. But today, we don't want some guy who's putting out all this, softer whatever music, because it just doesn't work in today's rock environment, which is basically nothing. So I wish we could get back to putting music out there together like we used to and listen to it together. Now you need a subscription to whatever radio station. And there are so many different choices that people don't land on one. So it's like, I might like the blend, or I might like the bridge, or I might like whatever. And so I'm not listening to the same stuff that my friend is listening to. And basically, people are only listening in their car for the most part. I don't know. I guess some people listen at home to satellite radio, but it seems to be more of a car thing, right? Um, he's not exactly back to writing love songs as he sings on this new, which was a huge song, I guess, in certain markets. Down to Joy is the name of the song. And it's got over 1 million views on YouTube. Can you believe that? Something that hasn't been promoted, it's got over 1 million views. It's Van Morrison. It's classic. It just has such a great groove, and the guitar playing on it is sweet. You just got to go listen to this stuff. If you haven't heard it, go listen to it. Um, the spirit of this record will remind you of things like Tupelo Honey, Caravan, or even Domino. He's got a ballad called Once in a Lifetime Feeling with a very strong violin in it, which is great to hear a violin. It's reminiscent of a dreamlike vibe that made classics such as Have I Told You Lately so iconic. There are string arrangements. The first song, Down to Joy, with its horns, its female backing vocals, and dabs of rhythm guitar, captures the essence of soul R&B pop that have made Van Morrison a lot of money, but maybe not as much as other people. You know, there's just so many good songs on this. There's a tribute to Ray Charles called "If It Wasn't for Ray." Again, you've got soul, blues, and jazz, and a great kind of call and response vocal, much like what you might hear on Jackie Wilson's set, or at least the horn parts are very reminiscent of that. So, again, if you're not a Van Morrison fan, and I am, in fact, I'm under Vanned. Okay, I have not listened to Van enough. This guy is brilliant, and he continues to put out brilliant music. And his deviation by talking cultural issues, and I think, you know, Van was just trying to call out the zombieism that is present in our day. People doom scrolling, people just their heads tilted downward, really bad for your neck, by the way. Just, just, you know, you're constantly looking down. It's not good for your neck. You should be looking up, right? But you're always looking down. You're looking at a screen. In my case, I'm talking to a screen, but you know, this is what I do for a living. And I try to balance it out with some other outdoor stuff. You know, you got to get out of the house. You got to enjoy your life. And listening to music is therapeutic for a lot of people. And I would say, the fact that Van is so busy making music, some of this stuff just is missed. There's so much of it to listen to. And it says here, the problem with being as prolific as Van Morrison is that this terrific offering might get dismissed or even worse, totally ignored, especially when you don't have, you know, any support system in the media to help this stuff along. The reviewer says that would be tragic and unfair because while it may not rank as one of the top 10 titles in his bulging catalog, Remembering Now shows he has reclaimed the magical, mystical inspiration many followers missed and is clearly not ready to retire anytime soon. So, translation, I love how they throw it upon other people, like the people who really missed his normal songwriting because he took a break to call out the craziness of the COVID era. Good for him for doing that. There should have been 100 people lined up. I'm like, none of the hard rock heroes, none of the people who've been on planet Earth for a while and have seen a lot of things. Van's a little crazy, huh? Van's kind of losing it. Eric Clapton's a little crazy. No, they were right. And Van, he's a worker. He goes out there and he plays live gigs. So this hurt him, and it hurt the people who wanted to go see him, and it hurt the people who were his support team. That's the whole point. We need to go out and make money. We need to earn a living. So he's just cut from a different cloth. I find it interesting that people who were born at a certain time tend to appreciate things more. They tend to understand the difficulties of their past and realize that, you know, we don't have it as bad as we think we have it today. But certainly he called out the establishment for their insanity. So anyway, I know it's kind of rambling, but this new album, you got to go check this out. It's been out for a while, been out since June. It's called Remembering Now, Van Morrison, and it's a classic that's just going right by you. So go check it out. If you don't like Van Morrison, you won't like it. But I don't know how you don't like Van Morrison. I mean, they do still play Brown Eyed Girl every 20 minutes on adult contemporary stations. So there is a footprint out there. It's just very small. And a guy who has a huge catalog, and thank goodness he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he should be in there twice. One guy, he should be in there twice because he's had twice the output as a normal recording artist would have. So there you go.